The relic. The TSS Perseverance hung in orbit above New Terra colony, its scared hull reflecting the golden light of the binary star system. Once the pride of humanity's Terran space fleet, the massive dreadnought was now considered little more than a relic, a floating museum piece that somehow remained on active duty while sleek, modern warships with quantum computers and AI battle systems took center stage. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the bridge, her weathered hand resting on the actual metal railing that surrounded the command platform. At 48, she was considered as outdated as her ship, a veteran of the Centauri conflicts who still believed in tactile interfaces and manual overrides. "Captain, incoming transmission from Fleet Command," announced Lieutenant Park from the communication station. Unlike modern ships where communications officers interface directly with neural implants, Park used an actual headset and physical controls. On screen, Rise ordered, straightening her jacket with its faded captain's insignia. The holographic display flickered, another sign of the Perseverance's aging systems, before resolving into the stern face of Admiral Takahashi. "Captain Rice, your reassignment orders have been processed," the Admiral said without preamble. "The Perseverance is being redeployed to patrol the outer reach, effective immediately." Rice kept her expression neutral despite the obvious demotion. The outer reach was where the fleet sent ships and captains they wanted to forget. "May I ask why, Admiral?" "We've maintained an exemplary record protecting the New Terra shipping lanes." Takahashi's expression softened slightly. "This isn't punitive, Alina. The fact is, the Defense Council has approved funding for 3 new Quantum-class destroyers. The Perseverance is expensive to maintain for what it offers tactically. So rather than decommission us, you're hiding us away where we won't embarrass the shiny new fleet." "The Perseverance is nearly 60 years old," Takahashi countered. "Your manual targeting systems, physical engine controls, non-networked computer systems, they're all relics. The new Quantum-class destroyers can process battle simulations faster than your crew can even register a threat. It's just progress." Reyes nodded stiffly. "We'll set course immediately, Admiral." After the transmission ended, Reyes turned to her bridge crew. She saw the disappointment in their eyes, but also determination. The 24 officers on the bridge had all chosen to serve on the Perseverance when they could have requested transfers to more advanced vessels. "Well, you heard the Admiral," Reyes announced. "Plot a course for the outer reach. We leave in 6 hours." Commander Jackson, her XO, approached the command platform. "The crew won't like it, Captain. The outer reach is where careers go to die. Then any crew members who wish to transfer have my blessing," Reyes replied loudly enough for all to hear. "Request forms are available in my office." Not a single officer moved from their station. The journey to the outer reach took 3 weeks at the Perseverance's maximum sustainable faster-than-light speed. Another disadvantage compared to modern ships with quantum slip drives that could cross the same distance in days. Reyes used the time to run drills, keeping her 1,200-person crew sharp despite the effective exile they faced. The outer reach was the edge of mapped space, a sparse region with few habitable worlds, and even fewer human outposts. Their patrol route would take them along the border of the unknown, the vast, unexplored region beyond human territory. Dropping out of FTL in 3, 2, 1, the navigation officer announced as the stars reappeared in the viewport. "Commence standard patrol pattern," Reyes ordered. "Passive scans only. Just because we're in the middle of nowhere doesn't mean we can be sloppy." For 2 months, they patrolled without incident. The Perseverance visited the scattered outposts, ran security checks, and conducted training exercises in empty star systems. The crew maintained their discipline, but Reyes could sense their growing restlessness. Then, during a routine patrol near the boundary of unexplored space, everything changed. "Captain to the bridge." The urgent call over the ship's intercom pulled Reyes from a fitful sleep. She was moving before her feet hit the floor, years of combat experience taking over. The bridge was tense when she arrived. officers speaking in hushed tones as they monitored their stations. "Report," she ordered, taking her place at the command platform. Long-range sensors detected an anomaly at the edge of the Deneb sector, Commander Jackson explained, pointing to the tactical display. It appeared suddenly, like a tear in space. Then this emerged. The screen showed a massive object, clearly artificial, but unlike any spacecraft Reyes had ever seen. Its surface shimmered with an oily iridescence, its shape constantly shifting slightly as if the hull wasn't fully solid. "Size comparison," Reyes asked, studying the readings. "Approximately 4 times our mass," reported Lieutenant Commander Chen from the science station. "But its energy signature is unprecedented. Our sensors can barely get a lock on it." "It's noticed us," the tactical officer announced. "It's changing course, heading directly toward our position." Reyes felt a cold certainty settle in her gut. "Battle stations, bring all weapons systems online, but hold fire. Let's not start an interstellar incident if we can avoid it." The alert klaxon sounded throughout the massive ship as crew members rushed to their combat positions. On modern vessels, much of this would be handled automatically by AI systems, but on the Perseverance, every station required human hands. "They're accelerating," reported the sensor officer. "At current speed, intercept in 14 minutes. Open a channel," Reyes ordered. "All frequencies, first contact protocols." For 10 minutes, they broadcast standard greeting messages while the alien vessel continued its approach. Then, without warning, the alien ship released a pulse of energy that washed over the Perseverance. "Some kind of scan," Chen reported, checking his instruments. "Extremely invasive. It's probing our computer systems." "Disconnect all networked systems," Reyes ordered immediately. "Initiate isolation protocols." This was where the Perseverance's outdated design became an advantage. Unlike modern vessels where all systems were integrated into a central AI, the Dreadnought's computers were compartmentalized. Critical systems like weapons, engines, and life support all ran on separate isolated computers that could function independently. "They're charging weapons," the tactical officer shouted. "Evasive maneuvers," Reyes commanded. "Bring kinetic batteries to bear." The massive ship lurched as its maneuvering thrusters fired. For its size, the Perseverance was surprisingly agile. Another legacy of its original design philosophy that favored mechanical reliability over theoretical efficiency. The alien vessel fired, a beam of coruscating energy that sliced through space where the Perseverance had been moments before. A second blast caught the edge of their shields, sending power fluctuations throughout the ship. "Return fire," Reyes ordered. "Kinetic batteries only." The Perseverance's main armament was considered primitive by modern standards, electromagnetic rail cannons that fired physical projectiles rather than energy weapons. But as the tungsten carbide slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed, they demonstrated their effectiveness. The first salvo struck the alien vessel, actually penetrating its shimmering defenses and gouging huge chunks from its hull. The vessel recoiled, seemingly surprised by the physical attack. "They're adapting," Chen called out. "Their hull is reconfiguring to absorb kinetic impacts." The alien ship fired again, this time with multiple energy beams that danced across the Perseverance's armor. Alarms blared as hull breaches were reported on 3 decks. "They're targeting our computer nodes," the tactical officer reported. "It's like they're searching for something." Reyes gripped the command rail as another impact rocked the ship. "They're looking for a central computer to disable us. They don't understand our architecture." For the next 20 minutes, the 2 vessels exchanged fire in a deadly dance. The alien technology was clearly superior, but the Perseverance's unconventional design and Reyes' experienced crew kept them in the fight. "Captain, engineering reports the FTL drive is charged and ready," Jackson reported. Reyes nodded. "We've learned what we needed to. Plot a course back to fleet headquarters. We need to warn them." "What about first contact protocols?" Chen asked. "I think the energy beams they're firing at us settled the question of their intentions," Rise replied grimly. Execute FTL jump as soon as we're clear. The Perseverance disengaged, using its remaining conventional thrusters to gain distance before the FTL drive activated. The alien vessel pursued, firing continuously, but the old dreadnought managed to reach jump distance. As the stars blurred around them, Rise stared at the tactical display, showing the data they'd gathered on the alien ship. Whatever they are, they're not interested in talking, she said quietly, and they were scanning our systems far too thoroughly for this to be a coincidence. You think they were looking for weaknesses, Jackson said. It wasn't a question. I think they were doing reconnaissance, Rice corrected. And we just survived first contact with what I suspect is an advanced scout. The damage control teams worked around the clock as the Perseverance limped back toward the heart of human space. 37 crew members had died in the brief but intense battle, and dozens more were injured. In her private quarters, Rice recorded her official report, detailing everything they had observed about the alien vessel, which she had designated Voidborn, based on its emergence from the spatial anomaly. She emphasized how the enemy had attempted to penetrate their computer systems, and how the Perseverance's isolated, primitive technology had proven resistant. The modern fleet's integrated AI combat systems may be vulnerable to the Voidborn's electronic warfare capabilities, she concluded. Recommend immediate security reviews of all networked defense systems. As she ended the recording, Reyes gazed out her viewport at the streaking stars. The Perseverance might be old, its technology outdated by current standards, but today that very obsolescence had saved them. She couldn't shake the feeling that the coming conflict would challenge every assumption the Defense Council had made about modern warfare. And the ship they had mocked as a relic might just be humanity's best hope for survival. The Resistance. 2 weeks after the Perseverance's encounter with the Voidborn scout, Captain Rice stood before the Defense Council in the gleaming central chamber of Fleet Headquarters on Mars. Her uniform was pressed, her posture rigid, but the dark circles under her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. "So you're asking us to believe," Admiral Chambers said, his tone dripping with skepticism, "that this alien vessel specifically targeted the Perseverance's computer systems, and your outdated, non-integrated technology somehow saved you." "That's exactly what I'm reporting, Admiral," Rice replied, keeping her voice even. "The Voidborn probe, as we've designated it, attempted to infect or override our command systems. When that failed, it resorted to conventional attacks." Fleet Admiral Takahashi, her former superior, and the only council member who had served on ships like the Perseverance decades ago, leaned forward. "And you believe modern fleet vessels would be vulnerable?" "With respect, sir, I don't just believe it. I know it," Rice said firmly. "The Quantum-class destroyers, the Nexus-class carriers, even this headquarters, everything is connected through the tactical network. If these Voidborn can infiltrate that network, they could potentially disable our entire defense infrastructure simultaneously." The 7 admirals exchanged glances. Admiral Chambers spoke for them. "Captain Rice, while we appreciate your concern, your evidence is anecdotal at best. One encounter with an unknown vessel doesn't justify overhauling our entire defense strategy. We've dispatched the TSS Reliant to investigate further," added Admiral Wong. "A modern Quantum-class destroyer with the latest defensive systems should be able to engage this threat properly and gather accurate intelligence." Rice felt her stomach knot. "When was the Reliant dispatched?" 4 days ago," Takahashi answered. "They should reach the encounter coordinates tomorrow." "You need to recall them immediately," Rice urged. "If I'm right, the Reliant will be defenseless against the Voidborn's electronic warfare." Admiral Chambers stood, signaling the end of the hearing. "That will be all, Captain. The Perseverance will remain in dock for repairs and evaluation. We'll take your recommendations under advisement." Rice knew dismissal when she heard it. 3 days later, she was still on Mars, confined to headquarters while the Perseverance underwent assessment. She sat in the officers' lounge, watching the news broadcasts with a growing sense of dread. Commander Jackson found her there, slipping into the seat across from her with a data tablet in hand. "Nothing from the Reliant," he reported quietly. "They missed their scheduled check-in 12 hours ago." Reyes closed her eyes briefly. "They're not going to listen until it's too late." Jackson glanced around before sliding the tablet toward her. "I still have contacts in fleet intelligence. The long-range outpost at Proxima picked up this before going dark 6 hours ago." The tablet showed grainy sensor data of multiple spatial anomalies opening at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. From each tear emerged a vessel similar to the one they had encountered, but larger. "How many?" Reyes asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Intelligence estimates at least 30 vessels," Jackson replied. "And that's just at Proxima. Similar reports are coming in from 3 other border systems. They're launching a coordinated attack," Reyes realized, "and our response will be entirely predictable because we've standardized everything." She stood suddenly. "We need to get back to the Perseverance." "The ship's locked down, Captain. Engineers are still evaluating the damage. Then we'll need help breaking her out," Reyes said, her mind racing. "Contact Chief Engineer Rodriguez. Tell him to prepare for emergency departure, and find Communications Officer Park. I need her to send a message to every captain of every outdated ship still in service." The next 12 hours were chaos. The Voidborn fleet advanced rapidly through human space, targeting communications arrays and defense platforms with surgical precision. Just as Reyes had feared, the alien vessels deployed some kind of electronic warfare that rendered modern warships helpless, their integrated AI systems turning against them or shutting down entirely. Emergency broadcasts showed Quantum-class destroyers drifting powerless as Voidborn ships methodically destroy them. The TFS Invincible, humanity's newest flagship, had managed to fire only a single volley before its systems went dark. Amidst the confusion, Reyes and her core crew made their move. With the help of sympathetic dockworkers and a handful of officers who believed her warnings, they reactivated the Perseverance's systems and disengaged from the repair cradle. "We're receiving responses to your message, Captain," Park reported as they cleared Mars orbit. 17 ships have acknowledged and are moving to the rendezvous coordinates. Reyes nodded, studying the tactical display. The Voidborn advance had created a 3-pronged attack pattern, with their main fleet driving straight toward Earth, while smaller forces secured strategic locations throughout human space. "Who responded?" she asked. Jackson handed her a datapad. "It's quite the collection of antiques, Captain. The Defiant, Challenger, and Intrepid, all Resilience-class cruisers like the Perseverance. A handful of older Sentinel-class destroyers. Even the museum ship Constitution has been reactivated. The oldest ships in the fleet," Reyes said with grim satisfaction. "All with minimal automation and isolated systems. What about crews?" "Mostly veterans, retirees who've returned to service. Some academy instructors. A few, like the Constitution, are running with skeleton crews of volunteers." The rendezvous point was the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a navigational challenge for modern ships that relied on automated plotting, but familiar territory for crews trained to fly manually. As the Perseverance arrived, Reyes felt a surge of emotion seeing the assembled vessels, each one considered obsolete, yet now potentially humanity's last hope. "Open a channel to all ships," she ordered. When the connection was established, Reyes stood before the comm pickup. "This is Captain Elena Reyes of the TSS Perseverance. I won't waste time with pleasantries. You're here because you understand what we're facing. The Voidborn have neutralized our modern fleet with some form of electronic warfare that our older systems appear resistant to." She brought up a tactical display showing the advancing enemy fleets. "The Defense Council is attempting to coordinate a conventional response, but their options are limited. Most of our modern defenses are already compromised." "What exactly are you proposing, Captain?" came the voice of Captain Hernandez from the Defiant. "We're 17 outdated ships against an alien armada." "We're 17 ships they don't know how to fight," Reyes corrected. "The Voidborn have studied our modern technology, learned its weaknesses, But our ships, with mechanical controls, isolated computers, and human operators at every station, they're unpredictable. She outlined her plan, while the Defense Council attempted to evacuate Earth and organize what remained of the modern fleet. Their makeshift squadron would engage in guerrilla tactics against the Voidborn's primary advance. Their mission wasn't to win outright. That was impossible, but to gather intelligence and search for weaknesses while buying time for evacuation efforts. We've identified a pattern in their attack methodology, Commander Jackson explained. The Voidborn prioritize targets based on technological sophistication. They systematically disable command and control nodes, then communications, then weapons platforms. They leave civilian targets for last. Which means they'll underestimate us, Rice continued. They'll see outdated ships and consider us low-priority threats. We can use that. For the next 3 days, the Resistance fleet executed hit-and-run attacks against the Voidborn advance. They struck in small groups, targeting the alien vessel's propulsion systems and what appeared to be sensor arrays, then retreating before the full might of the enemy could be brought to bear. The Perseverance, with its heavy armor and powerful if antiquated weapons, led the most daring assaults. Rice pushed her crew and her ship to the limit, using the asteroid belt's dense fields for cover and the old dreadnought's mechanical reliability to maintain operations when electronic systems would have failed. After each engagement, they gathered to analyze the results. Slowly, patterns emerged. They're learning, adapting to our tactics, Captain Hernandez noted during a strategy session aboard the Perseverance. But they're still vulnerable to kinetic weapons, physical projectiles instead of energy beams. And their ship's hulls, added Chief Engineer Rodriguez. They seem to be composed of some kind of programmable matter, incredibly resilient against energy weapons, but susceptible to good old-fashioned impact trauma. Ray studied the battle data, focusing on a recurring energy signature they had detected. There's something else. Each time we've damaged one of their vessels severely, we've detected this unusual energy spike just before they retreat. Some kind of emergency system, suggested Commander Jackson. Or communication, Rice said, her eyes narrowing. I think they're networked, not just ship to ship, but possibly to some central control. The theory gained support when they captured partial data transmissions between Voidborn vessels. The signals were impossible to decode, but their pattern suggested a hierarchical command structure. If there's a central command node, Rice told her assembled captains, then we might have a chance to deal a decisive blow. The opportunity came sooner than expected. 5 days into their resistance campaign, long-range sensors detected a massive spatial anomaly forming near Jupiter. What emerged was a Voidborn vessel dwarfing all others, at least 10 times the size of the Perseverance. That's their command ship, Rice said with certainty. And they brought it into our system because we've become an actual threat. The Resistance fleet consolidated for what would likely be their final stand. 3 ships had already been lost, and the others showed battle damage that would have sent modern vessels back for months of repairs. But these old warhorses, built when humanity expected to fight prolonged conflicts far from shipyards, had been designed to take punishment and keep fighting. As they prepared for the confrontation with the Voidborn command ship, Rise received an unexpected communication from Fleet Headquarters, or rather, from the bunker where the Defense Council had relocated as the aliens approached Earth. Captain Rise, Admiral Takahashi's hologram flickered as he spoke. Your resistance effort has been noted. The evacuation of major population centers is proceeding, but too slowly. We need more time. We're doing what we can, Admiral, Rice replied. But we've identified what appears to be the Voidborn command vessel. If we can destroy it, we might disrupt their entire attack. Takahashi hesitated. There's something you should know about the Perseverance, something that wasn't in the official specifications. Rice leaned forward. Sir, during the Centauri conflicts, certain ships were outfitted with prototype weapons, planet killers that were officially decommissioned after the peace accords. The Perseverance was one of them. Are you saying my ship still has a super weapon aboard? Rise asked incredulously. The system was never removed, just deactivated and sealed away, Takahashi explained. It was deemed too dangerous to dismantle safely. The override codes and location schematics are in the transmission I'm sending now. As the data arrived, Rise felt a mixture of shock and grim determination. The weapon was called a gravitic shear, a device that could create a catastrophic distortion in a planet's gravitational field, literally tearing it apart. Authorization to use extreme measures is granted, Captain, Takahashi said formally. May whatever gods exist have mercy on us all. The transmission ended, leaving Rise with the weight of an impossible decision. Using such a weapon violated every treaty humanity had signed with other spacefaring species, but facing extinction, were such considerations still relevant? She gathered her senior officers and shared what she had learned. If the Admiral is right, we have a weapon that could potentially destroy the Voidborn command ship. But activating it would mean crossing a line humanity has sworn never to cross again. With respect, Captain, Jackson said quietly, I think that line was crossed when the Voidborn launched their attack. This is survival now. The others nodded in agreement. Reluctantly, Rise gave the order to locate and prepare the hidden weapon system. As they moved into position to confront the massive Voidborn command ship, humanity's last defense wasn't the sleek, A-driven warships of the modern fleet. It was a collection of outdated vessels crewed by veterans who remembered when space combat depended on human skill rather than computer algorithms. And at their center was the Perseverance, a ship they had called outdated, now carrying the deadliest weapon ever created by human hands. The Reckoning. The Resistance fleet advanced toward Jupiter's orbit, where the Voidborn command vessel loomed like a dark star, surrounded by its escort of smaller craft. From the Perseverance's bridge, Captain Rice watched the tactical display with a grim expression. Their 17-ship squadron had been reduced to 11 through their guerrilla campaign, and those that remained showed battle damage that would have sent modern vessels limping back to space dock. Deep in the Perseverance's bowels, Chief Engineer Rodriguez and a team of specialists worked frantically to activate the gravitic shear weapon. According to Admiral Takahashi's schematics, the device had been sealed behind armor plating in a forgotten section of the engine compartment, disguised as auxiliary power regulation equipment. Status report. Rise called over the comm. We've located the control systems, Rodriguez replied, his voice strained. But there's a problem, Captain. The power requirements are massive, more than our current configuration can generate. Commander Jackson looked up from the tactical station. The Voidborn fleet is advancing, Captain. Intercept in 22 minutes. Rise made a quick decision. Rodriguez, what if we diverted power from propulsion and shields? We'd be dead in space and defenseless, the engineer warned. But could you power the weapon? There was a pause before Rodriguez answered. Yes, theoretically, but we'd need to be within extremely close range of the target for maximum effect. The gravitic shear creates a cascading field. Effective radius depends on the mass of the target. How close? Rise asked. Point blank, came the grim reply. Directly alongside their hull. The implications were clear. Activating the weapon would almost certainly mean the destruction of the Perseverance as well. Rise took a deep breath and opened a channel to the other ships in the Resistance fleet. This is Captain Reyes. We've identified a potential weakness in the Voidborn command vessel, but exploiting it will require getting the Perseverance alongside its hull. I'm ordering the rest of you to focus on creating a diversion. Draw off their escort vessels and create a path for us. That's a suicide mission, Elena, Captain Hernandez of the Defiant objected. It's the only chance we have, Rise replied firmly. The Perseverance is the only ship with the necessary equipment for this operation. After a moment of silence, Hernandez responded. The Defiant will lead the diversion. Good hunting, old friend. Rise addressed her crew next, explaining the situation and offering anyone who wished it the opportunity to transfer to the other vessels. Not a single crew member accepted the offer. "Very well," she said, pride evident in her voice despite the circumstances. "Battle stations. Prepare for our final approach." The Resistance fleet split into 3 attack groups, targeting different sections of the Voidborn escort screen. The Defiant led the largest group in a direct frontal assault, while the others executed flanking maneuvers. Their outdated weapons, electromagnetic railguns, physical missiles, and manually targeted energy cannons, struck the alien vessels with surprising effectiveness. The Voidborn, having adapted their defenses to counter modern energy weapons, found themselves vulnerable to the kinetic impacts of solid projectiles, accelerated to relativistic speeds. Several smaller alien craft were crippled in the initial exchange, creating momentary confusion in their formation. "They're responding as predicted," Jackson reported, watching the tactical display. "Their command ship is holding position, while the escorts move to intercept our attack groups." Reyes nodded. "Helm, set course for this approach vector." She indicated a path that would take the Perseverance through the temporary gap in the alien formation. "Maximum thrust until we're past their perimeter, then cut to maneuvering power only." The old dreadnought's engines roared to life, pushing the massive vessel forward with surprising acceleration. For all its age, the Perseverance had been built when raw power and structural integrity were prioritized over the elegant efficiency of modern designs. "Enemy vessels adjusting to intercept," the tactical officer warned. "Evasive pattern Delta," Reyes ordered. "All batteries, suppressing fire." The Perseverance shuddered as its weapons discharged, rail guns launching solid projectiles, missile tubes emptying their conventional payloads. They weren't trying to destroy the enemy vessels, merely force them to adjust their courses. "Rodriguez," Reyes called over the comm. "Status of the weapon." "Control systems are online, Captain," the engineer reported. "Power conduits are being rerouted now. We'll be ready to initiate the sequence on your command." A violent impact rocked the bridge as a Voidborn energy beam struck their port side. "Hull breach on Deck 4. Someone shouted. "Seal that section," Reyes ordered calmly. "Maintain course." The tactical display showed the battle unfolding around them. The Resistance fleet was fighting valiantly, drawing off Voidborn escorts and creating the diversion they needed. But they were taking heavy losses. The Challenger exploded in a silent flash as 3 alien vessels concentrated their fire on its engine section. The Constitution, the oldest ship in their makeshift fleet, had lost propulsion and was drifting, still firing its weapons at any enemy that came within range. "We're approaching the perimeter of their defense screen," Jackson reported. 30 seconds to break through." Reyes gripped the command rail as another hit rocked the ship. "Once we're through, all power to maneuvering thrusters. We need to get alongside that command vessel's central section." The Perseverance burst through the gap in the Voidborn formation, engines straining as it accelerated toward the massive command ship. The alien vessel seemed to realize the threat too late. Its escorts were engaged with the Resistance fleet, leaving its flanks momentarily exposed. "Cut main engines," Reyes ordered as they approached the behemoth. "Maneuvering thrusters only. Bring us alongside their midsection." The Perseverance's main drives went silent, and the smaller maneuvering jets fired in precise bursts, guiding the dreadnought into position alongside the Voidborn command ship. The alien vessel dwarfed them, a mountain of shifting, iridescent material next to their battle-scarred hull. "We're in position, Captain," the helmsman reported, maintaining station at 50 meters from their hull. "Rodriguez, begin power transfer to the weapon," Reyes ordered. "Divert everything except life support and maneuvering thrusters." Throughout the ship, systems began shutting down as power was channeled to the hidden weapon. Lights dimmed, shields collapsed, weapon systems went offline. The Perseverance became a drifting hulk, vulnerable to any attack. The Voidborn command ship seemed to sense the threat. Its surface rippled, and weapon ports began to open along its flank. "They're preparing to fire," Jackson warned. "How long until the weapon is charged?" Reyes demanded. 20 seconds. Rodriguez called back. "But Captain, I've discovered something in the technical specifications. The gravitic shear doesn't just affect the target. It creates a feedback wave. The closer we are, the more severe the effect on us." "Understood," Rice said grimly. "All hands, prepare for impact." The void-borne weapons discharge, beams of coruscating energy striking the Perseverance's unshielded hull. Metal vaporized, compartments decompressed, but the old ship held together through sheer structural mass. "Weapon charge," Rodriguez reported. "Initiating gravitic shear in 3, 2, 1. Deep within the Perseverance, the sealed weapon activated. There was no visible beam, no explosion, nothing to indicate that the most destructive device ever created by humanity had just been unleashed. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the space between the two vessels twisted. Reality itself appeared to fold and stretch like fabric caught in opposing currents. The effect spread across the void-borne command ship's hull, distorting its perfect surface into impossible angles. "Gravitational distortion expanding," the science officer reported, voice tight with fear and awe. "The effect is cascading through their structure." On the tactical display, they watched as the gravitic shear tore through the alien vessel. Its strange material, so resilient against conventional weapons, proved catastrophically vulnerable to the fundamental distortion of space-time itself. The command ship began to break apart, not exploding but literally tearing itself to pieces as gravitational forces pulled it in different directions simultaneously. "Rodriguez was right," Jackson said quietly as warning alarms blared throughout the Perseverance. "The feedback is affecting us too." Reyes nodded, watching as structural integrity warnings flashed across displays. The Perseverance had been built to withstand incredible punishment, but no ship could survive the forces now tearing at its frame. "All hands to emergency evacuation pods," she ordered, her voice calm despite everything. "Abandon ship, that's an order." As the crew rushed to the escape pods, Reyes remained on the bridge with a skeleton crew of volunteers who understood what needed to be done. Someone had to keep the Perseverance positioned alongside the void-borne vessel until the gravitic shear had done its work completely. "The alien fleet is disorganized," Jackson reported, staying at his station despite the evacuation order. "It looks like destroying their command ship has disrupted their network." Reyes watched the tactical display, seeing the truth of his words. The remaining void-borne vessels moved erratically, some drifting powerless, others firing randomly or retreating toward the spatial anomaly that had brought them. "Send one final transmission to the fleet," Reyes ordered. "Tell them the void-borne command structure appears centralized. Taking out the command ship has compromised the entire invasion force." As the message was sent, the deck plates beneath them groaned and buckled. Hull breach warnings sounded from multiple decks. "Structural integrity failing," the engineering officer reported. "We have maybe 2 minutes before complete."